Hello and welcome. I'm Debbie Hammond. Thank you for committing to facilitate a God of the Word Bible study. Discussion leading is a privilege I've always enjoyed. In this video, I'll talk you through some of the occasional challenges you may face so that you and your group members also have a wonderful and profitable experience. Before your first meeting, please read the entirety of the God of the Word Leaders Manual. Toward the end of the manual, you'll find a page titled Addressing Challenges in Your Group. The section covers topics under 5 categories: mediating answers, group atmosphere, personal application, time management, and prayer time. This video illustrates 1 or 2 examples from each section. In response to question 3, Katie says, "I think God's saying sin doesn't matter anymore." The group's facilitator, Jane, responds, "Thank you, Katie. Well, Sam, how did you answer this question?" In the example, Katie's giving an unscriptural answer to the question. Jane gives an opportunity for someone else in the group to share. If you're in this position, it's important to redirect the question to someone who has a history of answering questions correctly. Notice also how Jane thanked Katie without agreeing, and then called on the most knowledgeable or reliable member of the group. If your group's bonded and the person who answers wrongly isn't generally timid, you might first ask him or her for a Bible reference or to share which Bible translation they're using. Sometimes confusion arises from the different wording in translations. And doing this takes the focus off that group member, putting it back on the scripture. If the same individual's answers are repeatedly drawn from their denominational or political ideologies, consider approaching them privately outside the group. Ask if they'll share specific Bible references for their answers to keep the group more focused on the biblical text. Most likely, they'll appreciate that you're soliciting their assistance. In this example, a group member asks a question that's not included in the lesson. Greg says, "Was this book of the Bible included after the Council of Trent?" The discussion leader, Sam, chimes in saying, "That's an interesting question. We could probably talk for hours about these passages. Greg, let's wait and see if this gets addressed in the video. If not, maybe you and I can do some research this coming week. Okay, we're on question number..." And Sam moves the group on. Notice how Sam affirms Greg's curiosity and reminds everyone that there's no limit to the number of good questions that could be discussed about any passage. At the same time, he explains the need to stick to the given questions in order to get through the lesson on time. If you find yourself in this situation, please remember that however interesting the subject and however prepared you may be to give an answer, the moment you allow a diversion, you've set a precedent. Thereafter, the group will assume they're welcome to introduce additional questions or subjects. In this example, the group is quiet and lacks intimacy. No one volunteers to answer question 8. Sam, the discussion leader, finally calls on John, who barely glances up to whisper a one-word response. Sam moves on to the next question. Question 9 asks, "For what can we be thankful and worship God acceptably?" Once again, the group is silent. Marcus looks like he's about to speak, but instead looks at the others in the group and then down at his lap. Anne fiddles with the pages of her book. The leaders, Jane and Sam, can address this by analyzing their environment. First, they avoid sitting the group around a table, as it subconsciously becomes a barrier. They also avoid oblong or square seating arrangements. Instead, they form a tight round circle, which ensures visibility of each group member. If some seats are unoccupied, the leaders push those chairs out of the circle, since those dead spaces can be isolating. If applicable, one of the leaders speaks privately and lovingly, but directly, to any group member who's made more than one offensive remark, is domineering, or regularly wants to offer the others advice. This can quickly shut down a group. It's also important for leaders to consider the tone of their own voice, their body language, and their level of transparency. Speaking too softly or too loudly will not invite engagement. Are you smiling often? Have you included a few details when sharing your own personal application? Most importantly, Jane and Sam go to the Lord, asking Him to create a bond of genuine love between group members. During the discussion, one or more group members tend to give the others advice. Emily says, "I'm struggling to trust God at work. My boss is an angry person. I want to be respectful and honor the Lord, but it's tough. I've been seeing a counselor for help." Marcus says, "I'm not so sure about counselors. You might need to take legal action. I know a guy who works in human resources. I'll bring you his number. Maybe he can tell you what to do." The advice giver may have very pure intentions. Nevertheless, most of us appreciate a safe place to share our struggles without necessarily being told how to handle them. Often, we already know what we ought to do and just want to honestly share about or request prayer over our battle to do it. If a struggling person gets unwanted advice, they may shut down and refuse to share personal things in the future. Or worse yet, they may not return to the group. The best way to handle this is to address it before it happens. In your very first meeting, suggest that the group becomes a safe place to share. Then clarify, asking them directly to avoid advice giving. From time to time, include a reminder in your opening statement. It's possible a group member may directly ask for advice. In this scenario, let's say that Emily asks if anyone in the group has HR expertise. You should be the first to respond, saying, "Someone in the group might have worked in that field. If so, would one of you reach out to Emily this week?" As the group meeting continues, the discussion of a particular question is exuberant and interesting, but much more time is being spent on it than was planned. In this example, Jane says, "Wow, great discussion on question 7, everyone. I know we could say a lot more about this, but we may not get to the last question or someone's favorite if we don't move on." Then, without hesitation, Jane launches into the next question, number 8. If much more time is being spent on a question than you planned, firmly but graciously interrupt and explain the need to move on. If it's one individual's answer that goes on for an extended time, you may need to politely interrupt them and say something like, "Anne, those are all great points. But would you mind if I stopped you there? Since I think some of what you're saying may be covered in a later question. Thank you for the great segue, though." Then try to find something later in the discussion to tie back to what they were saying and affirm them. Our final example addresses a challenge regarding prayer time. A group member suggests praying over a personal matter that was shared by someone else without requesting the sharer's permission. In the context of John's answer to question 5, he shares that his mother isn't saved. Katie says, "I think we should pray over John's family situation." John looks stunned. Other group members exchange glances. With a warm smile, Jane, the leader, says, "That's very thoughtful, Katie. We definitely want to pray for John if he's willing. Let's see what, if anything, he requests when it's time to pray." Notice Jane's gentle tone. You'll want to give the individual who shared their personal situation a way to agree that they'd like prayer or to move on without group prayer if they're not ready for that. Thank you for taking the time to learn how to better steward your group's discussion. If you ever start to feel a little overwhelmed, review the leader's manual for tips you may have overlooked. Share and pray over specific concerns with your co-leader. And of course, ask the Lord to impart wisdom and confidence for your weekly facilitation. Remember that He's able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine.